Hey folks, Gary here with Paramount, and welcome back to part 2 of the in-depth comparison review of the Zero Compromise ZC527 versus the Nightforce ATACR 5-25. We got a lot to cover in this video. I'm going to have chapter markers down below so you can go check that out. A couple things that I'm going to cover in this video just real quick is number one is a correction from the last video. I have something that I want to address that I didn't demonstrate properly. The other thing that I don't feel like I covered enough or as in depth, and it's something I should have because it's not insignificant. And that is the zero stop comparison between these two optics. I want to make sure that you understand how these work, and I want to make sure that you understand how this one works versus this one. The other thing I want to cover is a major accessory that I recommend for this optic specifically, that I think if you're going to get this optic, you really can't live without. The other thing that we're going to do, folks, is do a very thorough and detailed specification comparison between these two. And that one's really important because it's going to educate you on what those specifications that are published by different optic companies mean, not necessarily just the information between these two, which will be important and relevant to this review, so that whether you're looking for these optics or not, you have more information on that. The other thing, because I think it's a major, I know at least for me, is we're going to do a detailed illumination comparison between these two. I know I kind of previewed that a little bit in the last, but I want to go through and actually show you what these two optics look like, because I really do think for a lot of people that is going to be one of the biggest, quite frankly, a selling factor on this, but I want you to understand what that is. The other thing, folks, a lot of you that are watching this video right now, you are either interested in long range or you're dipping your toe into it, or maybe you've been shooting for a long time. Really doesn't matter. If you really want to learn long range the right way, folks, Ray Helms from X-Ring and I have come together and we've put together the XP Long Range Academy. Both of us have been teaching and shooting long range for almost 20 years. And together, folks, you're going to get the absolute best and the most amount of experience in the small time that you're going to be with us during those courses. We got a whole video up there about it. Go check that out. I'm telling you, if you want to learn long range the right way, I don't care if you're a brand new shooter, you've never shot long range, if you're an experienced shooter, folks, the one-on-one time that you're going to get with us and our other extremely experienced and talented instructors is going to save you so much time, money, and energy on buying the wrong equipment, on wasting a bunch of ammunition, on just wasting your time at the range. Folks, come train with us. I promise you, you're going to be glad you did, and it's going to get you on the right footing so that you can be proficient and not be frustrated and not buy the wrong gear. As a matter of fact, if you haven't bought anything, we don't want you to. Come use our guns. We're gonna have student guns set up, ready to go. And for those of you out there that already have long range gear, but you don't wanna travel with it, you don't wanna fly with it or drive around with it, we have student guns set up. We have a list of unbelievable sponsors that are sponsoring this venture. We just want you to come out, have a great time, learn long range the right way, learn from all the mistakes that we've made over the last 20 years so that we can put you on the path to success. That's really what it's all about. All right, so now that I got that shameless plug out of the way, let's get into it. First and foremost, I have a correction to make. I'll be honest with you, when you are shooting these videos, when I'm shooting these videos, I got a really small brain to begin with, and 3/4 of my brain is focused on camera angles, audio equipment, and things like that. And I get things wrong sometimes. But what I can assure you is that if I get something wrong, I'm going to come back and correct it. So on the last video, I talked about adjusting the diopter, and during that whole time, I was kind of adjusting this ring right here. Folks, this is just a locking ring. Back here is the diopter. So you are going to loosen this locking ring, adjust the diopter so that the reticle is perfectly clear and focused to your eyeball, and then you lock that diopter back in place. So once you have it set, and a diopter is a set once and forget type of thing. Once you have it set, you get that thing locked in place, and you can still do that with the cap on either way. But I wanted to make sure I corrected that because I demonstrated that completely wrong. It's really important to me that when I'm reviewing a piece of gear, I don't care if it's optics or otherwise, my goal is to make sure that when you get done watching those videos, you feel like you have personal experience on that. So I think it's really important that I get all the details in, even if it doesn't, fit the, short YouTube video mold. And on top of that, making sure that I get those details right. All right, so the other thing I want to cover real quick before I launch you off into the rest of this video is I don't think I spent enough time discussing and comparing how these zero stops work. So first of all, when it comes to the Zero Compromise This is a one-step process that I really like. Once you zero the turrets on the Zero Compromise, it automatically sets your zero stop, and it sets it to a negative 0.5 without doing anything else. So negative 0.5 mils right there. All right, it can't go any lower than that. Now you can, through a second step, and it's in the instruction manual, I'm not going to go through it, but you can very easily, if, let's say you want a -1 mil or -2 mils set onto your zero stop, you can do that, but that does require an additional step. All right, so now let's talk about how you zero and set the zero stop on the Nightforce, because at a minimum, if you're setting the zero stop, it's a 2-step process and could potentially be a 3-step process, and I'll clarify that. So let's say you just got this out of the box, you put it on your gun, we've zeroed it, right? So obviously you're going to loosen or remove your turret and then mechanically zero that to the zero mark. Once that is zeroed, all right, then what you're gonna do is you're gonna pull off that turret, and right here is a clutch system for the zero stop. Once you have the optic zeroed, what you're gonna do is you're gonna loosen these 4 fasteners on this clutch system, and then you're gonna rotate that clockwise until it stops. If you've rotated to the point that it stops, you're gonna have a return to zero stop, right? It's gonna go right back to 0. It won't let you go any lower. What I always do with this is I rotate it clockwise until it stops, and then I back it off about a 1/4 of a turn. I think that gives me somewhere around -1 or so. And then I tighten these fasteners on the clutch system. Then your zero stop is set and you're good to go. Now, what I'm talking about when I say this could potentially be a 3-step process is just this. Let's say you already have this optic zeroed and the zero stop is set, but you're gonna put it on another rifle, whatever you got going on. Well, let's say you have to zero that rifle, or to get that rifle zero, you need to go below what your current zero stop is set at. So really, if you're gonna put this on another rifle, what I would do is remove these caps, I would loosen these, I would back this clutch system off significantly, then we're gonna have to retighten all 4 of these fasteners. Then I would put my turret cap back on, zero this rifle as you normally would, and then you'd have to take this back off and reset the zero stop for that particular weapon system. So that is a very big difference. And I will say this is one of the more simpler ones. Man, there's some zero stops out there that are just downright complicated and can cause a lot of issues. You know, the Nightforce does offer a very simple solution for that. You know, you can't really mess anything up on that, but I will say the Zero Compromise, obviously, once you zero the rifle and you zero the turrets out, you have a zero stop automatically set. Pretty elegant, pretty nice solution overall. All right, folks, so let's talk about my favorite accessory, and that's the Zero Compromise block mount. Folks, I really like these mounts. They're extremely well made. And I think actually for, you know, considering Zero Compromise is a higher end with everything, right? These are extremely reasonably priced. So these mounts are $400 for this mount, but when you look at Spur, those are the same price. When you look at the MDT one-piece mount, those are the exact same price. And folks, this is one of the nicest mounts and the easiest mounts to mount the scope. I'm saying mount a lot. All right, I apologize now for saying mount so much. But folks, this is one of the nicest mounts I've ever used, and the easiest to mount an optic in. There was no ring pull. It went in there. I slowly kind of back and forth, just like I cover in my scope mounting video that you can go watch over there. I tightened these down the way that they're supposed to be, had no issues. It's extremely well made. The other thing that you'll notice right here is we do have an onboard anti-cant device, which is really nice right there. And you can actually switch that from one side to the other. You can actually switch it over there, or you can put it back here in the back as well. So lots of different modularity with that. And then on top here, you can see that we have some threaded holes where you can actually attach additional accessories. If you want to put, you know, an IR aiming device, an optic mounted laser rangefinder, there's plenty of accessories to do that. You can also get these block mounts in 0 MOA, or you can get them in 20 and I think also a 30. Don't quote me on that, but I'll list what is available there. I loved how well the optic and these mounts just fit together perfectly. It's like they were made for each other. But I do think that there's something to the fact that when you're buying a mount that is made by the exact same company that makes the optic, and these are clearly engineered with each other in mind, being that they are a 36mm tube, they're kind of hard to find 36mm mounts to begin with. But I think especially if it's Zero Compromise optic, get yourself one of these Zero Compromise block mounts. that is going to fit perfectly together, and it's just a great mount. All right, folks, so I just want to show this to you real quick. It's almost like unboxing the ZC527 because it comes with the exact same stuff, or the lack thereof, but this is the ZC840. So this is an 8-40 Zero Compromise. We'll pull this out like this. We can see we have that neoprene cover. This is very well packaged. I like the way that they package this, but again, this is a 8-40. So if you're looking at ELR, or you just want additional magnification overall. And I thought it'd be interesting just to kind of show you kind of a side-by-side. We have the ATACR 5-25, we got the ZC527, and then the ZC840. I do think it's kind of interesting if you look at how much further back the saddle is, you know, all of your turrets are on the Zero Compromise versus how the design of the Nightforce. I don't know what that means from an engineering standpoint or performance standpoint, but I am going to talk about some of the differences I notice in image quality and some other things that just the differences that I've noticed between these two, having used both of these for the last 10 months, and again, even using Nightforce. I've had this optic for 3 or 4 years now. All right, folks, so what we're going to do is go through the technical specs. Some of these that may be a little ambiguous or more technical, I'll go through and kind of tell you what those mean. I don't mean to insult your intelligence, but I know for a lot of people, they just don't know. So when it comes to the Zero Compromise 5-27 versus the ATACR, the magnification range on the Zero Compromise is 5-27 versus 5-25. So you're getting an additional 2x out of the Zero Compromise. In my opinion, it's a little greater than that, and I'll talk about why that is. The magnification is the same, but the image is different, and I'll clarify that in just a few minutes. Both of these have a objective lens of 56 millimeters. Main tube diameter, we have a 36 millimeter tube over here. The click value is 1/10 of a mil or quarter MOA, depending on which one you get. Zero Compromise has always offered the 5-25 in MOA. It was just recently, in the last month or so, I believe, they started offering the 8-40 in a MOA. Before, they only offered that in mil, so that's a new development. So if you are interested in getting a 8-40 in MOA, and that used to not be an option, it now is, just for your own information there. On the Zero Compromise, we have both windage and elevation locking turrets. We do not have that option available on the Nightforce. All right, so right here on the windage adjustment, the Nightforce does offer slightly more windage adjustment than the Zero Compromise. On the Nightforce, you're getting 24 mils of adjustment or 80 minutes of angle, whereas the Zero Compromise, you're getting 20 mils or 68 minutes of angle. All right, so when it comes to the field of view on the Zero Compromise at 5x, which is the lowest setting, you're getting a field of view that's 21 foot. On the Nightforce, you're getting 18.7, so slightly smaller field of view. At 27x on the Zero Compromise, you're getting 4.5 feet, whereas at 25x, you're getting 4.9 on the Nightforce. So you're getting a little bit wider field of view out of the Zero Compromise at all the same magnifications. The eye relief on the Zero Compromise is 3.54 inches or 89.9 millimeters. The eye relief on the Nightforce is 3.5 inches or 88.9 millimeters. Parallax compensation for the Zero Compromise, your minimum is 25 meters or 27.34 yards through infinity. The parallax compensation on the Nightforce is 41.48 meters or 45 yards through infinity. When it comes to length and weight, the length on the Zero Compromise is 15.24 inches versus 15.4 inches. Weight is 37.9 ounces on the Zero Compromise versus the ATACR, which is 37.6 ounces. Now, both of these optics have illumination. You have the option of green or red illumination. I'm going to show you, we're going to go through the illumination on both of these in just a second, and the different options, how to change those options, and there's some cool stuff there. All right, when it comes to the light transmission, Zero Compromise basically states a very definitive 92%. Nightforce is a little bit more ambiguous. It says 90% plus. I will tell you, folks, and we'll talk, and I'll show you examples of this. You're clearly, well, what I'll say for sure is that your image is brighter and clearer in the Zero Compromise, and significantly so. You really do need these side by side to compare them to be able to see some differences with that. And I will talk a little bit more about that and show you, or attempt to show you through some video footage that I have on that. The diopter adjustment is -3 to +2 on the Zero Compromise. When it comes to the Nightforce, folks, I could not find a specific diopter adjustment range anywhere. I looked through the technical manuals, I looked through their online information. All right, so now let's talk about the exit pupil, what is published, and let's dive into this a little bit. Number one, you need to know what exit pupil is. It's an important specification when it comes to optics. But on top of that, I also want you to know how we get that information, right? So an exit pupil is essentially going to be the diameter of our objective lens divided by how much magnification that we're using. Now, there's some things that can go on inside that optic that can reduce that size. So for instance, if we look at the objective lens on the Zero Compromise, it is 56 millimeters. So we're just gonna take 56, and then they state at 5x that it is 10.5. Now, if we take 56, divide that by 5, we actually get a larger exit pupil of 11.2. Now, they're probably handling the light in different ways and apertures and whatever other magical things are going on. They know that for whatever's going on in the processing that light, an exit pupil ends up only being 10.5, not the maximum of 11.2. That's fine. I can buy that. But when we look at the published exit pupil at max magnification on the Zero Compromise, it says it's 27x, it's 2.07. So we take 56, divide that by 27, we come out with 2.074. Makes perfect sense. Now let's look at the published numbers on the Nightforce. So we have 56 millimeter objective lens. We divide that by 5, because at 5x they say it's 8.3. All right, we're getting 11.2, but they're stating 8.3. They're processing that light in a way that, for whatever reason, at the end of it all, we get an exit pupil that's smaller than what is absolutely possible. Now, this is where things got a little fuzzy for me, and I actually contacted Nightforce and had to clarify this. At 25x, they state that their exit pupil is 2.3 millimeters. All right, so if we take 56 millimeter objective lens, we divide that by 25, comes out to 2.24. That is the maximum your exit pupil could be. There's really nothing they could do to make it larger. And that didn't make a lot of sense to me. So I contacted them, I emailed them. And ultimately they said, yes, we're just kind of rounding up to that whole number of 2.3, but that's what's going on, folks. So the actual exit pupil out of the Nightforce 5-25 at full magnification is going to be 2.24 millimeters. Is that a big deal? No, but technically it is incorrect. So just take that for what it's worth. And folks, this is one of the things I always tell students at all our courses is use the least amount of magnification that you need, because as you go up in magnification, folks, you are reducing the amount of light that is hitting your eye, and you're increasing distortion, you're increasing artifacts, you're increasing mirage, and you'll actually get to the point to where you potentially having an optical shift. Where you see the target in the optic, if there's a lot of mirage, it might be slightly different than that. So anyways, make sure you guys are using the least amount of magnification that you possibly need so that you're getting the clearest, best image possible, getting the most amount of light that we can possibly get through this optic to your eyeball. On top of that, folks, I will say a couple things, and this is one of the things that actually made this review very challenging, is the fact that on the back here, we have a much larger ocular lens. I will tell you, and one of the things I was talking about when it came to the magnification range on this, so while this does provide an additional 2x on the magnification range, at any power, if all things are the same, folks, it feels like you're getting more magnification. The image is brighter, it's clearer. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And I really like how forgiving this eye box is, how large it is. The eye relief seems like it's a lot more forgiving than the Nightforce. And folks, these are small differences, but while they are small, they're not completely insignificant. The eye box in this is larger. The image you see looks larger because we have a larger ocular lens back here, and everything about this optic seems a little brighter, a little more crisp. And the other big thing I noticed, performance-wise, I'm gonna try to illustrate that with some images here in just a second, is with low light, this performed fairly significantly better. Also, mirage. Essentially, when you're seeing mirage through an optic, what you're seeing is a distortion in the light. Though that distortion is typically caused by heat waves and water vapor and some other things going on there that is distorting and bending that light in different ways. When you have a better quality optic, it will handle that distortion much better. And that's what I saw with the Zero Compromise. So, I think 90+% conditions, there's no real major advantage of either one of these, right? But I will say in heavy mirage or in low light conditions, this is where the Zero Compromise starts to shine, and you can see a significant difference in performance and image quality on the Zero Compromise. One of the biggest challenges of why it took me so long to complete this review was I was trying to replicate exactly what I did with that Arkin versus Nightforce review. If you haven't checked that out, again, go check that out. It's a good review. Spent a lot of time filming through those optics and showing you comparison when it came to tracking and many different other things. Because what I was trying to use to film through these was the TriggerCam 2.1, which, by the way, folks, this is an excellent device. One of the great things about this compared to many others is that it has a focus adjust that you can adjust the camera itself and focus to the image. In previous videos, what I used was the Tacticam. And the problem with the Tacticam is if I had that optic adjusted to my eye, it wasn't focused for the Tacticam. So I either had to choose, was it focused for the Tacticam and I couldn't really see what's going on through there, or vice versa. This allows you to not have to choose, right? You can focus the optic to your eye, then you can focus the camera to the optic. And it works out great, extremely good definition. But the only problem with this was the max capacity on this. And about the max capacity, at the very limit, the smallest collar available, I can get it on the Nightforce. I just could not get it on the Zero Compromise. We do sell them. They're great products. They really are. But they do have limitations when it comes to capacity. The other thing I want to talk about and clarify is the illuminated reticles on both of these. Both of these have excellent illuminated reticles. They just go about it in a couple different ways. So I'm going to show you how to set those up or to change those. With the Nightforce, it's pretty straightforward. Basically, all you're going to do is turn your reticle on. If it's on red and you want it to turn to green, you're just going to hold that button in until it turns to green. And then there again, you can adjust the brightness from there. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. With the Zero Compromise, it's a little bit different, and there's also a couple of illumination settings behind your battery compartment here. So we're gonna open this up. And again, I'm using the tool that they included, but really you can use a spent cartridge, probably a quarter or anything else. All right, so once we have our battery compartment door off, you're gonna see that we have a standard CR2032 that powers our illuminated reticle. If you notice right here, we have a couple of basically some options, and there's actually some really small switches. So this first one that you see right here, there's basically looks like an I and an O. If we push that toward the I, there's a little switch in the middle that you're just going to push toward that eye. You're turning the aim on. It's automatic illumination management. Basically, anytime your optic is greater than a 45 degree, it will turn that illumination off. So, if we put the rifle pointed toward the air, like we're hanging it up somewhere, or we lay it on its side, anything like that, where it's clear that you're not going to be using that reticle, it's going to turn that illumination off. So, and it will also turn that off, I think it's after like a couple hours, something like that, even if it's laying in a standard shooting position. So basically all it's going to do is help conserve the battery life for your reticle. So there's that. Now if we look right here as well, folks, we have a R and a G. All right, if we push that switch toward the G, we now have a green reticle. If we push that switch toward the red, we're gonna have a red reticle. I like the red reticle, we're gonna stick with that. And then I am gonna make sure that aim is on. And there again, once we're done there, all we're going to do is reinstall that 2032, put our battery compartment lid back on, and then go ahead and tighten that down. I think you're going to be surprised at what you see with the illuminated reticle on this one. It's pretty fascinating. All right, folks, so I'm doing my best to get you the best imagery possible of both the reticle and the illumination of the reticle. I've went back and forth between the Tacticam and the trigger cam. Usually the Tacticam has the least quality image usually when I'm filming through an Optic. But in this particular case, after going back and forth trying them both, I've got the Tacticam a very crisp, clear, sharp image, and it's just kind of, I got this thing taped on here. Anyways, what I want to do is make sure that I'm getting you really good imagery of both the reticle and the illumination of that reticle. So I'm going to go ahead and hit record on this thing. And we are in an area that is shaded by the house, but out there we have, I won't say full sunlight, but it's a pretty bright image out there, right? So what I'm gonna do now, folks, is start cranking up this illumination so that you can see what I'm talking about as far as that goes. In most circumstances, even with the amount of light that we have right now, we would not be able to see the illumination. Folks, that right there is not even a quarter, and you can already see that illumination. And look how evenly that illumination is dispersed through the entire reticle. It looks so good, man. And then we're gonna crank this thing all the way up. Right now, we are blowing out the imagery because it is so bright, so we'll dial this back down. So right there would be the appropriate amount of illumination for these conditions. And when you have the illumination on in full sunlight, you may not be able to see the illumination in the reticle on a fully lit, target out there that's a bright white target or something like that. But folks, as soon as you move to targets in the shadows or even on a dark background that would normally cause your reticle to fade out or you not be able to see it as clearly, that illumination stands out and it works really well. It works exactly when it needs to when you have full sunlight. And it just does a phenomenal job. I've never seen a reticle that looks as clean as this when the entire reticle is illuminated. That right there may be a very big decision point for many of you. And again, I'll kind of zoom this out and then we'll continue to turn up the brightness on that. And even there, folks, you can still see your crosshairs. And folks, this is the challenge I've always had with the Tacticam specifically, is that as soon as you start changing the magnification, it'll take it out of focus for the camera, even though your eye sees it very clearly. Or if you change the parallax to make sure that it's focused for your eye, it takes it out of focus for the camera. Which again, both the Tacticam and the trigger cam are meant to capture moments, not to see the level of fidelity that we're trying to do. It just doesn't do a great job when we're trying to put either one of these devices on such a large ocular lens. With the Nightforce, you can barely get the trigger cam on. This is a millimeter or two larger, and it just won't go on there. One more time, we're gonna go ahead and zoom in. All right, so what we're gonna do now is turn that illumination off completely. But folks, just look at that reticle. It's so nice. All right, now I'm gonna turn our illumination back on. And then I will pan around just a little bit, folks, so that we can kind of see, even in very bright areas. And if you can imagine in full sunlight, you may not be able to see the illumination on the reticle in these brighter areas, but as we pan over to these darker areas, like on this tree, darker targets, or targets down in the shadows, you can see it very, very clearly. So again, folks, in my opinion, by far the best illuminated reticle that I've ever used. I'm gonna try to rig this up so that we can use it on the Nightforce as well, just so you can get a kind of a comparison on that. We'll see how that goes. All right, folks, so now I have the Nightforce rigged up here. It looks pretty good. But what I'm gonna do, folks, I'm gonna try to see if we can get the illumination to show up. I don't think we'll be able to. I'm gonna close this scope cover. All right, folks, so I've closed that scope cover. Hopefully you can see those little dots. Once I've got to max illumination, they'll blink. There we go. All right, so that is max illumination. And you can see those very well in sort of low light conditions, right? But right now, even as far as max zoom, I'm gonna digitally zoom in here with the Tacticam. You know, I'll bring this over to like a darker area, see if we can't. I see it a little bit. One thing that I will tell you as far as the difference between the Nightforce illuminated reticle and the Zero Compromise, in full sunlight, folks, even when I move that to a darker area, you still can't necessarily see the illuminated reticle on there. But as soon as, you know, we start getting into lower light conditions, we can see those very clearly. The big difference here though is instead of the entire reticle being usable in those low light conditions, here I'll adjust this down to where we're letting in just a little bit of light where you can kind of see that the reticle is illuminated every 2 mils. As we zoom out, I think it's 10 mils, yeah. At 10 mils, if you guys look at the bottom of that, you can see that we have 1 illuminated dot every 2 mils down to 10 mils. And at 10 mils, we get an illuminated dot on windage 2 mils to the left and 2 mils to the right. You know, I definitely think the illumination on this is perfectly acceptable. Very good when it comes to illuminated reticles, but it just is not nearly as good as the Zero Compromise. Now, with that being said, one thing that I will give it to the Nightforce is much easier to obviously change the illumination from green to red. You can do that right without taking anything apart, just hitting a button. Whereas on the Zero Compromise, you're obviously taking the battery compartment out and you're having to flip some switches. Not exactly something you want to do out in the field, but at the same time, I really can't think of an instance. I mean, you either prefer the red illumination or the green. I'm sure there is somewhere out there, some situation where you want to change it on the go, which would be easier on the Nightforce. But I think at the end of the day, you have a much better illuminated reticle with the Zero Compromise. All right, so while we're talking about it, if you like content like this, make sure you like, subscribe, throw a comment down below. That helps us out a lot. Also, if you support the Second Amendment, folks, stop watching YouTube. YouTube is not a friend of the Second Amendment. They're not a friend of the First Amendment. And I would much prefer you go over to Rumble where we have additional content over there and we're continuing to post more content. I want to see Rumble grow. Right now, they are not into censoring the way that YouTube is. YouTube is a political animal. They're pushing left-wing agenda. I have no tolerance for it. We are going to continue to stay on YouTube and get this message out and bring more people over to Rumble as much as we can. But I'd like to see that platform grow. It's not as streamlined, it's not as refined as YouTube is, but YouTube wasn't always as user-friendly as it is now. And hopefully as Rumble grows, folks, they remain true to that, right? They're gonna continue to support freedom of speech and not censoring certain political ideologies and things like that. That's what I'd like to see, and start taking business away from companies like YouTube that are antithetical to everything that is American, is my opinion. All right, with that being said, also folks, join us every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time, live right here on YouTube and Rumble for our Dangerous Liberty podcast. We have special guests on all the time. We talk about guns, gear, training, politics, and most importantly, because it's live, you get to join in on the conversation. We read your comments, we take your questions, and it's a lot of fun. So make sure you join us live every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern time for the Dangerous Liberty podcast. All right, folks, so what we're gonna do now that we've covered the illumination of these reticles to a great extent, I'm sure many of you tuned out already, but what we're gonna do now is go through the different options when it comes to reticles that are available both with the Zero Compromise as well as the Nightforce. And I'm also gonna give you my opinion on if you're new to shooting, or I'll give you my opinion on those reticles. Which reticle is for who? All right, so let's go do that. Folks, part 3 will be the grand finale, and I have definitely saved the best for last. In part 3, what we're gonna cover is the reticles. We're gonna cover a detailed tracking test on the Zero Compromise. I'm gonna show you that. But what you guys will really dig and really enjoy is watching me beat up on this thing, more than simulate a drop test. And then we're going to redo the tracking test to see if it tracks just as accurately and we get the same results after the drop test that we did prior to the drop test. So that'll be fun. I guarantee you'll enjoy that. I'm also going to attempt to give you an optical clarity comparison. I am going to include some of the footage that I've gotten through both of these. I'll put those side by side. I just don't know how definitive that's going to be because we really are limited by the devices that we're filming through these optics with. It just doesn't show the clarity and the fidelity that we need to do a detailed comparison. After the optical clarity comparison, I'm going to give you a summary of my overall thoughts on both of these, the pros, cons, strengths, weaknesses, advantages, disadvantages of both of these. And then finally, I'm going to give you performance ratings 1 to 10 in different performance areas of both of these optics, but then also an overall rating on both of these optics as well. So definitely don't miss part 3. I'll be releasing that soon. It'll be the culmination of everything we've done together here. And while guns or gear are great, folks, what we're really about is training. So make sure you go to ParamountTactical.com. Go check out our upcoming training schedule. If you're into long range, definitely check out our XP Long Range Academy courses that are coming up in 2024 and book those as soon as you can, folks, as they're filling up fast already, and slots are very limited. We're going to have very small classes for that so that we can ensure that you're getting one-on-one attention throughout the entire course, and it's going to be a lot of fun for all your gear needs, accessories, everything else. If you're looking for Zero Compromise, Nightforce, or any other gear, make sure you go to ParamountTactical.com. The only things that we carry are items that we have personally tested and we believe in and we stand behind. But we really appreciate you watching, and until next time, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you soon.